Okay, so it shouldn't take too long, and we'll go over any queries that you have at the end. So this is following on from Corinne's webinar last week. She gave tips on how to write a really good CV to help you get that interview. And now we're going to look at what you're going to do to prepare for the interview and to perform well at that interview. So before you even start looking for a job, I would absolutely advise everybody to lock down any social media accounts that you have, your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever. Make sure they're private, because people do Google people. So any skeletons in the closet, you want them locked away. So before you start looking for a job, get that locked down, and then you're ready to go. All right. So there's different types of interviews. You have your traditional interview. We're all familiar with that. It's your one-to-one interview, and these can be formal or informal. And of late, then people would say, we'll meet you for a coffee and a chat. All right. We have then video interviews. They're probably going to become increasingly popular now over the next few months, and they're definitely popular for online meetings. But they also help for, you know, they save on time and travel and cost, and that's why companies would have opted for video before. If you're invited to a panel interview, you could have 2 or more people interviewing you. And this is good for you because it'll give you a different perspective on the role and the company. And what we'll come through on the next slide, we'll have a look at each of these interviews and how to approach them. Some companies also offer, or they would do group interviews. Now, these could be a thing of the past as things are changing so much for us all in the world we are today. But a group interview, these are usually by larger companies, you know, for the likes of Google, LinkedIn, or large corporations, where an interview process could go over 2 or 3 months. So a group interview, there's a number of candidates being interviewed at the same time. So we're all done the one-to-one, that's fine. If you're ever invited for a coffee and a chat, just remember there's no such thing as just a chat. This is an interview. So you still have to prepare as you would for this coffee and chat, all right? If you call for a video interview, and I know myself and my colleagues, that's what we've been doing over the last number of weeks, probably more so than ever. So video interview, you're still going to prepare the same as if you were meeting them in person, all right? Just a couple of little extra tips though. You need to check your equipment beforehand. You need to make sure it's charged up, you know, practice your make sure you've got a good connection, do a practice run, check the position of your camera. You don't want your camera looking down, or you don't want your camera looking up. You just want it at eye level. Like my laptop is actually leaning on a Scooby-Doo jigsaw, but nobody can see that. So you're just at the right level there. All right. And again, have a nice background. You don't want any distractions. You don't want to, you know, if you're going to be sitting in your bedroom, you don't want a load of washing, or, you know, keep it professional, a nice clear background there. Okay. If you go for a panel interview, okay, this is usually the HR manager, the hiring manager, and either somebody off the team or another department manager. But as I said, it's a good opportunity for you to get a feel of the dynamics, what the culture is like, what you know, what their opinion on the role and the company culture is like. When you're going into a panel interview, as you're being introduced, repeat their names so you remember, and then you can engage with them, all of them, throughout the interview. It's important to try and keep everybody engaged and direct questions or your conversation to all of these. So your eye contact, your body language, and treat them all the same, because you don't know out of those 3 who is going to make the final decision on who gets the role. Okay. If you're called to a group interview, as I said, they're not really the norm, but just in case you are called to a group interview, you need to, as you go into that interview, you need to, I suppose, greet the interviewers and the candidates, listen to their names, and then when you're in a group discussion, you then can, I suppose, personalize or interact a little bit more when you mention names. And you don't want to be overpowering in a group interview, so and you don't want to go along with the crowd either. If you don't agree with a particular answer, and you feel strongly about your answer, and you have a good solid argument, or you have a good point to put it across, and be confident and be positive about how you express yourself. Again, you don't want to be first all the time either. So you don't want to take over. And a good thing to do as well is listen to other people when they're giving their answers. If you listen to what they're saying, it gives you a chance then to process that and maybe come back with a better answer. So it's all about listening, your body language and interaction. And again, for any interview, that's your body language, your listening skills, and how you communicate. It's a theme that's going to go through the interview process for you. Okay. Preparation is key. And I can't tell people enough about this when they're going for an interview. The days of winging an interview, they're long gone, especially in the current climate. It's very competitive now. So you want to stand out from the rest of the crowd or the other people going for that. So we've gone through getting you the really good CV. We've got you this interview. So you want to make the best of the time that you have with these people. Give yourself the best chance. So find out who you're meeting. Okay. Reconfirm, make sure you have their names, check them out on LinkedIn, have a look at their work history. Is there any companies in common, or is it industries? This will help you in interview then to make a connection, or, you know, when you're asking questions, it's always good. Knowledge is so good to have gone into an interview. Also look at their service offering, whether it's a product or whether it's a service. If it's a product, buy it, use it, taste it, get people's feedback, get the family involved. If it's a service, find out about the service, get a free trial run. Who are their clients, who uses this service, and make your observations, get some feedback. Again, this is just all due diligence. When you're in an interview, it'll help you make that connection with your interviewer. Follow them on social media. Have they won any awards lately? Is there any articles? Have they bought a new big plant? Have they recently done, launched a new product? It's all about awareness and knowledge. So follow them on social media and see what they're up to. The other part of preparation that's very important, and it's not just about your CV and about you, about the product, about you, it's knowing your CV well. And the amount of people that get their tenure wrong, or the continuity of their work experience wrong, you'd be very surprised at how many people actually do. So you need to be comfortable with your CV, you need to know your story, your journey, and you need to be able to express that with confidence. Do a mock interview. Hear yourself talk about yourself. A lot of people aren't comfortable about doing that. So look in the mirror. Keep saying them. Say it to yourself going around the house, but say it out loud. So just so that you're comfortable when it comes to the actual interview. You know what you're going to say, but you know how you're going to say it. Okay. So part of your preparation is very important. And we did mention your CV. And at the time when you're preparing your CV, this is a similar situation. You need to look at the job spec, find out exactly what they're looking for, and write down those keywords or those key skills. Look at your CV, look at your experience, and match it up. Okay, match how many of these requirements that you actually have or that you can offer, and be able to document your successes then in relation to this. So when you're talking about yourself and you're able to relate back to that job spec without obviously saying it, but straight away then the interviewer can see, God, this is what they can walk in here and offer us straight away. So you're selling yourself in the relevance to the job spec. I hope that makes sense actually to everybody. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So you did the good CV, you're prepared for the interview, you've done your research, you're comfortable selling yourself, you've got this interview. So this is where those first 30 seconds are so important, okay? But in the run up to that, there's a bit of preparation as well. The night before, get a good night's sleep. You don't want to be out in the chair. You don't want to turn up looking absolutely bloodshot eyes, stinking of alcohol. That's a no-no straight away. You've lost the job. You've got to look the part. You've got to be groomed within an inch of your life. So you want to have them at hello. So there's suits pressed, shirt and tie, shoes polished. These are things people pick up on. I know one recruitment consultant, and the first thing they look at is people's shoes. And they feel that tells a lot about their preparation. So little things, if you've got a beard, make sure it's trimmed, clean hands, clean fingernails, no chip nail varnish on the ladies, just looking fresh and like you've made an effort. Depending on the culture of the company, actually, sometimes I would advise people to remove piercings and cover tattoos, but it depends on the culture of the company and the role that you're going for. But you'll have to judge that before and make those inquiries beforehand. If you're a smoker, I know it's your natural thing to go and have a cigarette before you go in. Do your best to avoid that. There's nothing worse than somebody coming into a confined room, and there's 2 or 3 of you, 4 of you maybe sitting in that room, and it's very distracting if somebody smells of cigarettes. It actually takes away from what they're saying. You're so distracted, you're concentrating on maybe the coffee stains on the shirt or the smelling of cigarettes. You're not listening to what they're saying. So the better presented you are, the more they'll focus on you selling yourself. And I know some of this might actually seem like common sense to everybody, but you would be surprised at how many people just don't make the effort. And it's a pity, because you're losing points straight away. So try and arrive early. Do a trial the day before, know exactly where you're going, find out the location, and then you won't be, you'll be more comfortable on the day making your way there. So arrive early. Not everything goes according to plan. Sometimes we get delayed. If you do, ring ahead, advise them that you're delayed, you're going to be 15 minutes. They'd really appreciate that. And then when you arrive into interview, acknowledge it again and apologize again. Don't pretend it didn't happen. The more you acknowledge these things, the better for you, the more buy-in you get. So you're there, you're gone in, you've got your introductions. Normally at this stage, I'd say good, strong handshake, but that's a bit controversial now. The future of the handshake's in jeopardy at the moment. So I don't know, I think at this point, I would probably just acknowledge them, put the hand up and make a joke. But I'd say for the foreseeable future at the moment, we're going to be looking at video conferences. So don't worry about the handshake, but keep the eye contact. That's important. Okay, so you're there, you've got yourself in the door, the nerves are a little bit shot, but the introductions have been, and now this is when the questions are going to start coming out. You can't predict what you're going to be asked. You can rehearse and rehearse as much as you like, but you just don't know what you're going to be asked. I know myself, when I'm dealing with my clients and I have somebody going for an interview, I find out as much information as I can from them. What's their interview style? Is it going to be competency based? Is it more personality? Will they be looking, for any demonstrations? So we find out as much as we can. If you narrow it all down, what people are looking for, and just to give you an example, sales managers that we speak to, and again, there's a common theme, like the sales manager for Linton Sprungley, the chocolates, the 2 things they look for when somebody comes into an interview is, 1, how nice they are, and 2, how smart they are for that role. Okay, so, and it's all about having energy and how you sell yourself in a positive light. So personality is so important. We can't change who we are. We are who we are, and you can't change that, but you can be polished in how you sell yourself and sell yourself as best as you can. And that comes from your preparation and your practice. All right. So answering questions, the STAR approach is one of the ones I would go back to quite regularly, and it's worked very successfully. So STAR approach, when they ask you a question, you're going to explain the situation. You're going to explain the task that you had to take, the action that you had to take, and the result that came of that. What did you learn from that situation? So a lot of people will get caught up on the situation and the task, but really what's important here is the action and the result. Okay, so just to give you an example of a competency-based question, describe a time that you had to deal with a difficult customer. Okay, so you describe the situation, what was the task, and what was the action, and what was the result. It could be, a time you had to make a difficult decision, or dealing with a difficult colleague. There's scenarios, so it's telling your story. So you have a story to tell. So make sure you tell it well and positively, and clearly give them what action you took and what you learned from it. If it involves talking about facts and figures, for sales, you always want to give examples of where you are in terms of your sales. Make sure when you're given the facts and figures that you can clearly demonstrate how you achieved those. Don't just say, yeah, I grew my territory by 25%. Okay, well, how did you do that? Know how you do that. Know where the big wins were and clearly demonstrate that. When you're answering your questions, because you've done your research on the company, if there's any clients in common, or if you've dealt with clients previously, mention them, because they will relate to you then, and they will know then that, okay, well, they already have a heads up about who our target customer is. So refer to common clients and always answer positively. Have a good energy about you. Don't be negative. Never slate your current or your previous employers or your colleagues. Use positive words. If it was an absolute nightmare to work there, you don't say that. You'd say it was challenging. So always use positive words. Nobody likes a moan. We don't want to hear anybody moaning, because again, straight away you go, okay, well, there's two sides to this story. What's gone on in the background? You start to question. So always be positive about scenarios. There's always one question you're going to be asked. Tell me about yourself. That's nearly the first thing you're asked when you go in. And it seems to throw people, even though you're going to be asked to talk about yourself. So tell me about yourself. That's professionally. That's in a professional capacity. So know your experience and have your little story there to tell. Okay. You could be asked what interests you about the job. And again, that goes back to, you're going to have looked at that job spec. You're going to know what the skills are required. And therefore, you're able to talk about why you're interested in that job. There's so many questions to be asked, but these would be the general ones, like what are your greatest strengths? What's your weakness? And here you need to be honest. And again, you need to put a positive spin on it. So, a greatest strength, I would probably, if I was given an example, I would say, well, I'm not afraid to ask questions. So if I'm in an environment that I don't understand, or it's a difficult scenario, I'm not afraid to ask questions. And to me, that shows that I'm willing to learn. I'm curious. I want to understand how something works, and that will help me sell that product. So again, it's a positive. If it's a weakness, you need to turn it into a positive. So a weakness, my weakness, I am absolutely out of my comfort zone if I have to do a presentation in a room full of people. I'm not confident. But to build on that confidence, that's why I would do the webinars. So it's a weakness, but it's showing that I'm working on that weakness and I'm trying to learn. So again, it's all about positivity as well. Okay. They may ask you, what do you know about our product or our service? You've done your research. So you demonstrate that, and you may have made observations. If it's a field sales rep, if you're going into a store and you're selling a product, you could have done your observations on how their competitors are performing, and you'd be able to make comparisons and share that information. They like that. So I hope this is all, you can visualize yourself in the interview. You've done your research, you're ready to sell yourself. You have your story. But don't forget, the interview, it's not just about you selling yourself. It's a two-way thing. It's about them selling the culture of the company and the role to you. All right. You have to have, I say this to everybody, you have to have a gut feeling coming out of that interview that yes, you want that role. Yes, you can see yourself working there, and you like those people. You can see yourself working there. And to help you get those answers, you need to ask your own questions. So this comes back to your preparation. Bring a notebook with you. Have, 2 or 3 questions. If you have 4 questions, have them written down and don't be afraid to ask them. You can ask questions on the product. You can ask, like if you're asking about the product, you can say, how do they compare to their competitors? What's their competitor's unique selling point over their particular service? Or what's the market share? So show that you're interested. If you're trying to find out more about the role, ask them, what are some of the challenges you might come up against in the role? So that's one way of finding out, what's going on at the moment, what difficulties do they face. If you're trying to find out about the team, what are the dynamics of the team, how many are on the team, what's the average tenure on the team? That will give you an indication on what the turnover of staff is like. You know, you don't want to be going from the frying pan into the fire. You want to find out that this is a good move for you. So how long is that current team in place, and what's the balance on the team? Again, if you're looking for progression, this question can scare some interviewers. They might say, "Oh, well, all they talked about is progression. We can't, really offer that career path, or they'll be gone in 12 months' time." You could ask them, "How do you see this position changing over time?" And then as they talk about growth and what projects are coming down the line, it'll give you a taster of what you're going to get your teeth stuck into. Okay. One question I really encourage everybody to ask at the end of an interview, and some people aren't confident, but I really do urge you to ask, do you have any reservations or concerns about me doing this role? If they do, now is your time to address it, there and then in the room. This question can catch people off guard, and usually they're straight out with you and tell you exactly what their issues are if they do have any concerns. It could be that you haven't mentioned a skill, or you don't have experience in a particular area, but you probably have it, but you just haven't mentioned it. It's very hard to remember to say everything in an interview. So it's a chance to sell yourself. You are your product. This is your sales pitch. So you have to have your close for the sales pitch, and that's your skills and what you can bring to that job. I could list 100, maybe more, of do's and don'ts. I'm trying to think of the most important to help you through this interview. When you go into an interview, if you are offered a drink, ask for a glass of water, because when you're in the interview, if you're asked a question and you're totally stumped, or you just freeze or whatever, if you take a glass of water, it buys you a bit of time, gives you a couple of seconds to process the question and come up with an answer. So always accept a glass of water. There's no problem there. Always protect your current employer's confidentiality. If you're going for a sales role and you're talking about your current role and you don't want to discuss revenue, you can maybe talk in percentages rather than revenue, but make sure they're clear and solid facts. And if there's a new product coming down, or if there's a new project being worked on, you don't disclose that information. That's confidential to your current role. And always be honest with your answers. There's no point in lying. There's no point in bluffing. Just be straight out. And people buy into you more. If people are doing 3 or 4 interviews for, a day for a particular role, they're going to pick out a mile off of somebody's chance in their arm. So you want to be the one that's straight up and that they want to. Again, there's a list of don'ts. When you're in an interview, don't interrupt. This goes for whether it's a panel interview or whether it's just one-on-one. Have a listen to what they say. Let them finish their story and then come back with your answer. If you're unsure actually of the question that they're asking you, and you give an answer, always say to them, does that explain what you asked me, or does that answer your question, if you're unsure? And if they're not, they will push back, and it'll give you a chance then to try and clarify for them. Never use bad language, complete no-no. Some people don't realize they're doing it, but straight away it's very off-putting, regardless of the culture of the company. Body language says a lot. Sit up straight, make good eye contact. Don't have your arms folded. It kind of closes you off. Now, you don't want to have sweaty hands going out the door either, in case you're getting to shake their hand. So just put the hands on the lap. Try not to be twitching, and just try and relax. I interviewed somebody before, and they literally sat back, they had their leg up and they had their arms folded. And within those first 2 minutes, I just said, no way. I had switched off. Body language is very important. As I went back to, I suppose, smelling fresh or looking well, you don't want there to be things to distract from your skill set and why you can do this job. All right, so you really want to put your best foot forward. Okay, so you've done all your hard work. You've got yourself through the interview. You're still alive. It was 30 minutes. It's not some people let the nerves get the better of them. When you're coming out of your interview, again, I would always say give a good handshake, but let's see what's going to happen with the handshake scenario, and thank them for their time. But there's nothing like finishing it off with send them a thank you email. Personalize it. There could be a little conversation or a joke shared, or they could be going on their holidays. Just have something in that little follow-up email and wishing them well and thanking for their time. it finishes it off nicely. All right. So that's a very quick synopsis of how to get you through an interview. And before we get to the questions, what we're trying to do with this series of webinars, we had the CV, we had the interview. You've done this interview and hopefully you've got the job, or you may be called back for a second interview. If you're called back for a second interview, it may involve a presentation. And they might give you a topic and you have to prepare a presentation. So my colleague Jessica is going to do a webinar on that next week, okay, and how to deliver effective presentations. So you're all more than welcome to join us for that webinar. Okay, so have we any questions there? I'll have a look now. Okay, so I have one here now. If you want to pop them into the chat and we'll have a look at it. So somebody has asked me, how do you know if a member of the panel of the interview or the interviewer has disengaged? Yeah, you need to be very aware, guys. Don't ramble, don't go off on your story. It's all about body language, and ask them questions. If you're asking them questions, you have to keep them engaged. If there's just one person leading the interview and there's a panel, you still engage everybody, okay? If you want to take notes, absolutely bring your notebook, but again, you still have to maintain that eye contact. I would say 80% eye contact to 20% writing down your notes. But you can also, you can follow up with an email. If it's through a recruiter, you have a couple of questions, but there's no harm in taking notes. Hope that answers that question. Now, okay. So, should you talk about salary in interview? I wouldn't bring it up. If they ask you, that's a different scenario. If they ask you, don't oversell yourself. The salary should have been advised before you went for the interview, or a guideline. So if you, for example, if you've been advised the guideline salary is 40,000 and you're on 50,000, there's no point in going in there saying, well, I want 55,000. You've got to be realistic. So if they mention salary, if they ask you what you're on, tell them exactly what you're on and what your expectations would be. I wouldn't bring up salary myself. I hope that's okay. Here's one here. What's the funniest experience you've had or heard from an interview? Oh, God, I could write a book and I could be sued, I say, from some people's stories. God, funny. I was once told about somebody who became a daddy and how he became a daddy, and he didn't mean to become a daddy. So that's too much information. You've got to read your audience. It's okay with me as a recruiter. I get an insight into what people want and how they think and what they like. And sometimes they become a bit too comfortable and tell me stuff they shouldn't tell me. I wouldn't do that in a real interview. Okay. That's a very good question. In current circumstances, how do you get the recruiter's attention? Yeah, it's very difficult at the moment. It starts with your CV, and we'd have to, if you refer back to, if you've missed Corinne's webinar, we do have tips. And what I'll actually send out to everybody after this, we actually have a candidate preparation guide. The CV is the most important document that you'll have when you're looking for a job. So you've got to have your keywords in there, but you've got to match the key skills. So you have to match what they're looking for. I know you might believe that you can do the job, and sometimes when we meet people, we believe they can do the job, but an employer will say, but they haven't got X, Y, and Z. It starts with the CV, and always give a follow-up email. Once you've applied, we're getting hundreds, we're absolutely getting hundreds of applications at the moment for jobs that we have. So the ones that are most relevant to that role will be contacted about that role. So you've got to be realistic. I know it's a difficult environment at the moment. Now, let me see. Should we take a... Oh, sorry, somebody's following up there. So in terms of in relation to the last question, would you advise to keep it professional as opposed to discussing personal life at any stage throughout the interview? Should the interviewer engage in chat or small talk? I think there's no harm in small talk. I like small talk when I'm interviewing people because it helps me understand then what they're like. And as I said earlier on, when you're going for a job, it's important that you're the right fit. It's not just about your capabilities. So if you don't get a job, it mightn't necessarily because you have the right experience, it's down to fit. And it's important that there's a good flow in the team. They might already have 3 very strong personalities on the team, and you might have a strong personality, and they just think, no, they need a bit of balance there. So it's, as I said earlier on, it's important to be you. You can't change who you are. So just be yourself. And if there is a little bit of small chat, I don't think there's any harm in disclosing. Like, you could talk about sport if you're an avid cyclist or if you run. Hobbies like that can reflect the type of person you are and what skills that you can bring to the job. So preparation, you know, dedication, all of that. So a little bit of small talk is no harm. Okay. Let me see if we have any else. Okay. If you have a gap on the CV and are asked at interview, would you respond? I would always try and be honest. I think obviously is the best policy. If you have a gap on your CV, some people don't put in when they've been traveling. And I would put in that you were traveling. If you had to take time out to mind a family member, if they were, and we hear that quite regularly, I would just say at the time, you know, there was a very sick member of the family, and that's all sorted now. And, you know, as you can see, I'm ready for work. I would just be honest. There's no point in saying, oh, is there a gap there? Or, you know, if you're honest, and you don't have to disclose too much information, but do acknowledge the gap if they bring it up. Okay. I think that's everybody's answered there now. If anybody has anything else, then I hope this has helped everybody and given a little bit of insight. And I know some people might think, oh, well, a lot of this is general cop on, but it's nice to be reminded not to take it too much in our stride. We do have to prepare, we do have to research, and you have to present yourself. Don't forget, you want this job, why you want this job, so put your best foot forward. Okay, I'll just check if we have any more questions, and if, okay. That's it, perfect. So what I will do is I'll send you a follow-up email. I'll send our candidate preparation guide, which has some tips in there. It'll give some example competency-based questions, stress questions, and I'll put the details then of our next webinar. Is there? It's worth logging into the webinar. Would anybody be interested actually in seeing on how to give a presentation? Well, I know I'll be watching it on how to give a presentation in an interview.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Well, look, I'll get those details out to everybody. And if you all have my contact details, so if you have any other questions that you think of afterwards, feel free to send them on to me and I'll come back to you. Okay, thanks guys. It was lovely to meet you all, and stay safe at the moment, and best of luck now over the coming weeks. I hope everything works out for everybody.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Bye now.
See you now. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Emer. See you. Chat soon. Thanks,
bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Emer, you see me?
Yes.
Hi. Maybe we should do the call through Skype, what do you think? Or will we stay? No quorum. That was great. Thanks, Emer.
You're welcome.
Great tips there.
Hey, great stuff.
We can't see you,